Sometimes life puts you exactly where you need to be, even when you think you're just trying to get home. Marcus Thompson thought Tuesday morning would be like any other day, dropping his 6-year-old daughter Emma at school, heading to his construction job, and somehow making it through another 12-hour shift to keep food on their table. He never imagined that a delayed subway train, a woman's desperate cries, and his forgotten paramedic training from years ago would collide in a moment that would rewrite both their futures. In a world where strangers pass by without making eye contact, where everyone's buried in their phones and problems, one man's split-second decision to help a stranger in crisis would prove that sometimes the most ordinary people are capable of the most extraordinary things. This is the true story of how a single father's act of courage on a crowded subway platform didn't just save 2 lives, it revealed connections that would change everything he thought he knew about destiny, family, and the power of being in the right place at exactly the right moment. What happened next would make Marcus question everything he believed about coincidences, second chances, and whether some meetings are simply meant to be. Marcus Thompson's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., same as every weekday for the past 3 years. He rolled over in the narrow bed, his back aching from yesterday's concrete work, and squinted at the cracked ceiling of their 1-bedroom apartment. The radiator clanged its morning protest, and through the thin walls, he could hear Mrs. Chen from next door already starting her day with the sound of running water. 3 years. 3 years since Sarah died in that car accident, leaving him to figure out how to be both mom and dad to Emma. 3 years of learning how to braid hair through YouTube videos, of burning more dinners than he successfully cooked, of lying awake at night wondering if he was completely screwing up this whole single-parent thing.
He padded to the kitchen in his bare feet, stepping carefully around the loose floorboard that squeaked loud enough to wake Emma.
Coffee first, then breakfast, then the daily battle of getting a 6-year-old ready for school, while also preparing himself for another day of manual labor that left his hands raw and his body exhausted. The coffee maker gurgled to life, and Marcus stared out the small kitchen window at the grey October morning. Chicago looked cold and uninviting, with clouds hanging low over the buildings like a dirty blanket. He'd grown up here, met Sarah here, planned to raise their kids here. Now it felt like a city full of memories he couldn't quite escape. "Daddy?" Emma's sleepy voice drifted from their shared bedroom. She slept on the bottom bunk while he took the top. Their apartment too small for separate rooms, but somehow they made it work. "Morning, sweetheart. Stay in bed for 5 more minutes, okay?" He heard her flop back down with an exaggerated sigh that made him smile despite his tiredness. Emma had Sarah's dramatic flair, though thankfully she'd inherited Marcus's practical nature too. She was the reason he got up every morning, the reason he'd left his paramedic job for construction work that paid better and had more predictable hours. Being a paramedic had been his calling once. He'd loved the adrenaline, the ability to help people in their worst moments, the knowledge that his skills could mean the difference between life and death. But paramedic schedules were unpredictable, and single dads needed reliability. Construction work was hard on his body but easy on his schedule. He knew exactly when he'd be home each night, exactly how much money would hit his account each week. The toast popped up golden brown, and Marcus spread peanut butter on both slices, cutting one into triangles for Emma and keeping the other whole for himself. He'd learned to appreciate simple breakfasts. There was something comforting about the routine, about knowing exactly how each morning would unfold. "Emma, time to get up for real now." This time she appeared in the kitchen doorway, her dark curls sticking up at impossible angles and her Disney princess pajamas wrinkled from sleep. She was small for 6, all big brown eyes and skinny limbs, but she had a smile that could light up any room when she chose to use it. "Do I have to go to school today?" she asked, climbing onto the kitchen chair that Marcus had bought second-hand but painted bright yellow because Emma said it looked like sunshine. "Every day, kiddo. That's how school works." "But what if I already know everything?" Marcus handed her the triangular toast and ruffled her impossible hair. "Trust me, there's still plenty to learn."
"Besides, what would Miss Rodriguez do without you there to help her with the art supplies?" Emma took a bite of toast and considered this seriously.
She'd appointed herself as Miss Rodriguez's unofficial assistant, a role she took very seriously.
"I guess you would be pretty lost without me." "Definitely. Now eat up so we can get you dressed and beautiful." While Emma ate, Marcus quickly showered and pulled on his work clothes, jeans with permanent concrete dust in the seams, steel-toed boots that had seen better days, and a flannel shirt over a t-shirt. His reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a man who looked older than his 32 years. The stress of single parenthood had added lines around his eyes and grey threads through his dark hair, But Emma always said he looked like a superhero, so he figured he was doing okay. Getting Emma ready was like herding cats. She'd start putting on her school uniform and get distracted by a toy. He'd remind her to brush her teeth and find her singing to herself in the bathroom mirror instead of holding a toothbrush. It was frustrating and endearing at the same time, this glimpse into how her mind worked. "Daddy, why do I have to wear the ugly school shirt?" she asked, holding up the navy blue polo with the school logo. "Because that's the uniform, and uniforms help everyone look the same, so nobody feels left out. But what if I want to look different?" Marcus knelt down to her level, something Sarah had always done when Emma asked big questions. "You know what makes you different. It's not your clothes, Em.
It's not your clothes, Em.
It's your kind heart and your funny jokes and the way you notice things other people miss. That stuff shines through no matter what shirt you're wearing." Emma considered this while Marcus helped her button a polo. "Like yesterday when I noticed that Tommy was sad because nobody picked him for dodgeball?" "Exactly like that." "And what did you do?" "I picked him for my team next game, and he smiled so big his whole face changed. That's my girl. That's the stuff that makes you special." By 7:15, they were ready to head out. Marcus packed Emma's lunch in the same Spider-Man lunchbox she'd been using since kindergarten, double-checking that he'd included the juice box she'd specifically requested and the apple slices she'd probably trade away for someone else's cookies. The walk to Emma's school was 12 blocks through their neighborhood, past the corner store where Mr. Parking. Patterson always waved from behind the counter, past the bus stop where the same group of commuters waited each morning with their coffee cups and tired faces, past the small park where Emma always asked to stop and swing, "Just for 1 minute, Daddy, please." This morning she was chattering about her friend Sophia's upcoming birthday party, which apparently would have a bounce house and face painting and pizza with extra cheese. Marcus listened with half an ear while scanning the street ahead, always alert for anything that might be dangerous or concerning. Old habits from his paramedic days died hard. "Can we get Sophia a really good present?" Emma asked, skipping to keep up with his longer stride.
Of course.
What do you think she'd like? Art supplies. She loves to draw, but she only has those broken crayons at school. Marcus's chest tightened with pride. Even at 6, Emma thought about what others needed, not just what looked impressive.
That's a perfect idea. We'll go shopping this weekend. They reached Lincoln Elementary at 7:45, just as other parents were dropping off their kids.
Marcus had gotten to know some of the other parents over the past 2 years, but he always felt slightly out of place among the moms who seemed to have everything figured out. They had elaborate pickup schedules and play dates and group chats about school events that he somehow never got added to. "There's Sophia." Emma waved frantically at a girl with pigtails who was climbing out of a minivan. "Go ahead, but remember what we practiced about walking, not running, in the parking lot." Emma nodded seriously and walked very deliberately toward her friend, her backpack bouncing with each step. Marcus watched until she was safely inside the building, waved when she turned to look for him at the door, and then headed back toward the subway station. The morning commute was always the same routine. 20-minute walk to the Red Line station, hopefully catch the 8:15 train, ride 35 minutes to his construction site in the Loop. If everything went according to plan, he'd be clocking in by 9 a.m. sharp. Today, though, the universe had different plans. The electronic board at the station announced a 15-minute delay due to mechanical problems. Marcus checked his phone and did quick math in his head. He could still make it to work on time, but it would be close. His supervisor, Jim, was understanding about the challenges of single parenthood, but Marcus never wanted to take advantage of that understanding. The platform was more crowded than usual because of the delay. Commuters stood shoulder to shoulder, everyone checking their phones and looking annoyed. Marcus found a spot near the wall and pulled out his own phone to text Jim about the delay. That's when he heard the sound that made his blood freeze. A woman's voice, high and panicked, cutting through the general noise of the crowd. "Help! Someone please help me!" Marcus looked up from his phone, his paramedic instincts immediately alert. About 20 feet away, near the platform edge, a woman was bent over, clutching her stomach. She was well dressed in a business suit and expensive-looking coat, but her face was twisted in pain and fear. "I think the baby's coming," she gasped to no one in particular. "It's too early. It's not supposed to be now." The crowd around her had formed that peculiar urban phenomenon where everyone stares but no one wants to get involved. People were pulling out phones, presumably to call 911, but nobody was actually moving toward her. Marcus didn't think. 3 years of construction work fell away, and suddenly he was a paramedic again, his body moving before his mind fully caught up. He pushed through the crowd, his heart rate spiking with familiar adrenaline. "Ma'am, I'm here to help," he said, reaching the woman just as her knees buckled. "I'm trained in emergency medicine." "What's your name?" "Victoria," she managed between rapid, shallow breaths. "Victoria Chen. The baby isn't supposed to come for 6 more weeks. I was just going to work, and then I felt this pain, and now I can't. I can't make it stop." Marcus caught her arm as she swayed, quickly assessing the situation. Her water hadn't broken yet, but she was clearly in active labor. Her face was pale with panic, and she kept looking around, as if searching for someone who wasn't there. "Okay, Victoria, I need you to listen to me. My name is Marcus, and I used to be a paramedic. I've delivered babies before, and I'm going to help you through this. First, we need to get you somewhere more private. Can you walk a few steps?" She nodded, gripping his arm with surprising strength. Marcus guided her toward a bench at the far end of the platform, away from the worst of the crowd. Someone had called 911. He could hear them giving the location to the dispatcher, but he knew from experience that response times in the subway system could be unpredictable. "Is there someone I can call for you, your husband?" "A family member?" Marcus asked, helping Victoria sit down. "My husband," she gasped. "David. But he's in meetings all morning." "His assistant never puts calls through during meetings unless someone's dying." She let out a laugh that was half sob. "I guess someone might be dying." "Nobody's dying today," Marcus said firmly, pulling out his phone. "What's the number? I'll make sure he gets the message." Victoria recited the number between contractions, which Marcus noticed were coming closer together. As he dialed, he did a quick mental calculation. If this baby was 6 weeks early, it would be premature, but not necessarily in immediate danger, especially if they could get Victoria to a hospital quickly. The phone rang 3 times before a crisp professional voice answered. "Davidson Holdings, David Chen's office. This is Margaret speaking. This is an emergency. I need to speak with David Chen immediately. His wife Victoria is in labor." "I'm sorry, but Mr. Chen is in an important board meeting and cannot be disturbed. If you'd like to leave a message..." "Ma'am," Marcus interrupted, his voice taking on the authority he'd learned as a paramedic. "I need you to listen very carefully. Victoria Chen is in premature labor on a subway platform. I'm a trained paramedic and I need her husband here now. This is not a message situation. This is a walk into that boardroom right now situation." There was a pause, and then Margaret's voice came back, all business efficiency. "I'll get him immediately." Marcus hung up and turned back to Victoria, who was gripping the bench so hard her knuckles were white. "Your husband's on his way. Now, I need to ask you some questions. How far apart are the contractions?" "I don't know. I wasn't timing them. I thought it was just back pain from sitting in meetings all week." Another contraction hit and she doubled over. "Oh God, this is really happening, isn't it?" "It's going to be okay," Marcus said, and realized he meant it. For the first time in 3 years, he felt completely sure of himself, completely in his element. "I need you to breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Like this." He demonstrated, and Victoria tried to follow along. Around them, the crowd had given them space. But Marcus could feel dozens of eyes watching. Someone was taking video with their phone, which annoyed him, but he couldn't deal with that right now. "How many children do you have?" Marcus asked. Partly to distract her, and partly because he needed to know what they were dealing with. "This is our first," Victoria said, and Marcus's heart sank a little. First babies usually took longer, but premature first babies were unpredictable. "We tried for so long, and then when it finally happened, everything was supposed to be perfect. I had a birth plan. I had a hospital room reserved. I had natural birthing classes." She laughed bitterly. "I don't think they covered subway platforms in natural birthing class." "Sometimes babies have their own plans," Marcus said gently. "The important thing is that both of you stay safe and healthy." A new contraction hit, stronger than the last, and Victoria cried out. Marcus could see that things were progressing quickly. In the distance, he could hear sirens, but they weren't getting closer fast enough. "Victoria, I need to check how far along you are. Is that okay?" She nodded, her face tight with pain and fear. Marcus had never been so grateful for his medical training, even though he hadn't used it in years. His hands still remembered what to do. His mind still automatically ran through protocols and procedures. What he found made his stomach drop. This baby was coming whether they were ready or not. "Okay," he said, keeping his voice calm and confident. "Change of plans. We're not waiting for the ambulance. This baby wants to meet you right now." Victoria's eyes went wide with terror. Here, on the subway platform. I can't have a baby here. This isn't how it's supposed to happen. Hey, Marcus said, taking her hands in his. Look at me. I know this isn't what you planned. I know it's scary. But you're not alone, and this baby is going to be okay. I've delivered dozens of babies, and they don't care whether they're born in a fancy hospital room or on a subway platform. All they care about is being safe and loved, and this baby is going to have both. Somewhere in the crowd, someone had found a security guard who was trying to clear space around them. Another person had appeared with a blanket from who knows where. The human capacity for kindness in crisis never failed to amaze Marcus, even after all his years in emergency medicine. I can't do this, Victoria whispered. Yes, you can, Marcus said. Women have been having babies for thousands of years, and your body knows exactly what to do. I'm going to help you, and in a few minutes you're going to be holding your son or daughter. Victoria gripped his hands tighter. What if something goes wrong? Then we deal with it. But right now, everything is going exactly as it should. Your baby is healthy and strong, and you're doing amazing. The next few minutes blurred together in a mixture of medical training, gentle encouragement, and the kind of raw human experience that reminded Marcus why he'd become a paramedic in the first place. Victoria was braver than she thought she was, and stronger than she knew. When the final moment came, when he caught the tiny, perfect baby girl who emerged into the world screaming and pink and absolutely furious about the whole situation, Marcus felt something inside his chest that he hadn't felt in 3 years. Pure, complete joy. She's beautiful, he told Victoria, wrapping the baby in the blanket someone had provided. She's perfect. Victoria was crying and laughing at the same time, reaching for her daughter with shaking hands. Is she really okay? She's so small. She's small, but she's strong. Listen to those lungs. The baby was indeed making her displeasure known with impressive volume. The paramedics will be here soon to check both of you over, but she looks great. Just then, the crowd parted, and a man in an expensive suit came running through, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his face white with panic. Victoria! Oh my God, Victoria, you okay? Margaret said, but I never thought. He stopped when he saw the baby in Victoria's arms. Is that David? Meet your daughter, Victoria said, her voice soft with wonder. She couldn't wait to meet you. Marcus watched David Chen fall to his knees beside the bench, staring at his wife and daughter with an expression of complete awe. This was always Marcus's favorite part when he'd been a paramedic, the moment when crisis transformed into joy, when fear gave way to love. The paramedics arrived just as David was taking his first tentative hold of his daughter. Marcus filled them in on the details with the efficiency of someone who'd been on their side of the situation many times.
Victoria's vital signs were good, the baby was responding well, and everything had gone as smoothly as an emergency delivery could go.
You did good, one of the paramedics told Marcus as they prepared to transport Victoria and the baby to the hospital.
Clean delivery, baby looks healthy. How long since you worked emergency medicine? 3 years, Marcus said, watching as they carefully loaded Victoria onto the stretcher. Well, you haven't lost your touch. David Chen approached Marcus as his wife was being prepared for transport. I don't know how to thank you. You saved their lives. I just helped, Marcus said. Your wife did all the hard work. No, David said firmly. What you did was extraordinary. If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't known what to do. He pulled out his wallet and started reaching for cash. I can't take money for this, Marcus said quickly. Anyone would have done the same thing. David looked around at the crowd of commuters, most of whom were now dispersing as the excitement died down. No, he said quietly. Anyone wouldn't have. Most people would have called 911 and hoped someone else would handle it. He put his wallet away but pulled out a business card instead. I want to do something for you. Call me. Marcus took the card without really looking at it. Just take care of your family. That's thanks enough. As the ambulance pulled away, Marcus realized that his hands were shaking and his shirt was soaked with sweat. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him feeling strangely empty. Around him, the subway platform was returning to normal. Commuters were checking their phones, looking for updates on when the delayed train would arrive. He looked down at David Chen's business card for the first time and merely dropped it. Davidson Holdings, CEO and Chairman. Marcus stared at the card, then at the departing ambulance, then back at the card. Davidson Holdings was one of the largest construction companies in Chicago, the company that had contracts with half the major building projects in the city, the company that Marcus had heard other workers talk about in hushed, envious tones because they paid their workers well and actually cared about safety. He'd just delivered the baby of the CEO's wife. His phone buzzed with a text from Jim. "Where are you?" Work started 20 minutes ago. Marcus looked around the platform, at the lingering crowd of commuters, at the business card in his hand, at his own reflection in the train windows. For the first time in 3 years, he had no idea what happened next. Marcus made it to work 45 minutes late, his mind still reeling from the morning's events. Jim took one look at his face and waved off his stammered apologies. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Thompson. Everything okay?" "I just helped deliver a baby on the subway platform," Marcus said, realizing how insane that sounded. Jim laughed, thinking it was a joke, until he saw Marcus's expression. "Wait, you're serious? Like actually delivered a baby?" "Yeah." "Premature labor, no time to wait for paramedics. Had to handle it myself." "Jesus. Well, that's definitely a better excuse than traffic." "You sure you're okay to work today? Your hands are still shaking." Marcus looked down at his hands, surprised to see that Jim was right. The adrenaline crash was hitting harder than he'd expected. "I'm fine. Let me just get my tools and I'll catch up with the crew." But he wasn't fine. All morning, as he mixed concrete and carried supplies, his mind kept replaying those intense minutes on the subway platform. The weight of the tiny baby in his hands, the look of gratitude in David Chen's eyes, the rush of using skills he thought he'd left behind forever. By lunch break, word had somehow spread through the construction crew. Marcus found himself surrounded by guys wanting to hear the story, slapping him on the back and calling him a hero. The attention made him uncomfortable. He'd just done what needed to be done, the same way any of them would have fixed a broken piece of equipment or helped a coworker who got hurt on the job. "So what was she like, this lady you helped?" asked Tony, one of the younger guys on the crew. "Scared, brave, about to become a mom whether she was ready or not." Marcus took a bite of his sandwich, hoping to end the conversation there. "Did she tip you?" Tony grinned. "Rich lady, fancy clothes, you should have gotten something out of it." "It doesn't work that way," Marcus said quietly. "You don't help people because you expect something back." "Yeah, but still. Good karma, right? Maybe the universe will pay you back somehow." Marcus thought about the business card in his wallet but didn't mention it. David Chen had probably handed out thousands of business cards over the years. It didn't mean anything. The afternoon passed slowly. Marcus found himself making careless mistakes. His concentration shot. He dropped a wrench, measured a beam wrong twice, and nearly walked into a concrete pillar while distracted. Jim finally pulled him aside around 3 o'clock. "Go home, Marcus. You're going to hurt yourself or someone else if you keep working like this." "I'm fine, really." "No, you're not. And that's okay. You had a traumatic experience this morning, even if it ended well. Take the rest of the day, clear your head. I'll see you tomorrow." Marcus wanted to argue, but he knew Jim was right. His head wasn't in the game, and construction sites were no place for distraction. He packed up his tools and headed for the subway, trying not to think about this morning's events as he waited on the platform. The train was crowded with afternoon commuters, everyone looking tired and eager to get home. Marcus found a seat and pulled out his phone to check the time. 3:30. Emma wouldn't be out of school for another hour and a half, which meant he had time to stop at home, shower, and maybe start dinner before picking her up. That's when his phone rang. Unknown number with a Chicago area code. "Hello, is this Marcus Thompson?" The voice was professional. Female, slightly familiar. "Yes, this is Marcus. This is Margaret Williams, Mr. Chen's assistant. We spoke this morning during the emergency situation." Marcus sat up straighter. "Oh, yes, of course. How are Mrs. Chen and the baby doing?" "They're both doing wonderfully, thanks to you. Mr. Chen asked me to call and invite you to visit them at the hospital this evening, if you have time. He'd very much like to thank you properly." "That's really not necessary. I was just glad I could help." Mr. Chen was quite insistent. "He's at Northwestern Memorial, in the private wing. Would 7 o'clock work for you?" Marcus hesitated. Part of him wanted to just let this morning fade into memory, to go back to his normal routine of work and Emma and their quiet life. But another part of him was curious about David Chen, about the woman he'd helped bring her baby safely into the world. "I'd have to bring my daughter. I don't have childcare arrangements." "Of course, Mr. W." Chen specifically mentioned that he'd like to meet the family of the man who helped his wife. 7 o'clock in room 412? "Okay," Marcus heard himself saying. "We'll be there." After hanging up, he sat staring at his phone, wondering what he'd just agreed to. Emma would be excited about visiting a hospital. She'd been fascinated by medical things ever since they'd visited Sarah in the hospital during her final days. But this felt like crossing some invisible line from his normal world into something else entirely. He picked Emma up from school at 5:15, listening to her chatter about her day while only half paying attention. She'd gotten a gold star in math, helped clean up the art supplies, and convinced Tommy Martinez to share his cookies at lunch in exchange for her apple slices. Normal 6-year-old stuff that usually grounded Marcus in the present moment. "Daddy, you're being quiet," Emma observed as they walked home. "Did something bad happen at work?" "No, sweetheart. Something unusual happened this morning before work." "What kind of unusual?" Marcus considered how to explain it. "I helped a lady who was having a baby." Emma stopped walking entirely. "Like, helped her have the baby?" "Right there. Where were you?" "On the subway platform." "That's so cool." "Was it gross? Was the baby tiny?" "Did it cry really loud?" Marcus laughed. Emma's enthusiasm infectious despite his complicated feelings about the day. "It was beautiful, not gross. The baby was smaller than normal because she was born early, and yes, she cried very loud to let everyone know she was okay." "She? It was a girl baby?"
Yes, a little girl. What did they name her? I don't know yet.
"But actually, we're going to visit them tonight at the hospital to see how they're doing." Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? We get to see the baby you helped deliver? That's like meeting a celebrity." "I don't think babies can be celebrities, Em." "This one can. She's famous for being born on a subway platform." "That's way cooler than being born in a boring hospital room." At home, Marcus made them both grilled cheese sandwiches for an early dinner while Emma peppered him with questions about the morning's events. She wanted to know every detail, from what the mother was wearing, to exactly how small the baby was, to whether Marcus was scared. "I wasn't scared," he realized as he said it. "I felt like myself for the first time in a long time." "What do you mean?" Marcus flipped Emma's sandwich in the pan, considering how to explain. "Before you were born, Daddy used to help people who were hurt or sick. It was my job, and I was good at it. But after Mommy died, I stopped doing that job and started building things instead." "Why?" "Because building things meant I could always be home with you at the same time every day. But this morning, when that lady needed help, I remembered how much I used to love helping people feel better." Emma nodded seriously. "Like how I love helping Miss Rodriguez with the art supplies, but even more important. Exactly like that." They finished dinner, and Marcus helped Emma pick out her fancy clothes for the hospital visit, a purple dress with sparkly buttons that Sarah had bought her for Christmas last year, paired with white tights and her good shoes. Emma took the responsibility of meeting a newborn baby very seriously. Northwestern Memorial's private wing was different from the regular hospital floors Marcus remembered from his paramedic days. Everything was quieter, more luxurious, with actual artwork on the walls and furniture that looked like it belonged in someone's living room rather than a medical facility. Room 402 was at the end of a long hallway. Marcus knocked softly, suddenly nervous about intruding on what should be a private family moment. "Come in," David Chen's voice called. The room was enormous. By hospital standards, with a seating area separate from the bed, and huge windows overlooking the city. Victoria was propped up against pillows, looking tired but radiant, holding a tiny bundle in a pink blanket. David stood beside the bed, and Marcus was struck by how different he looked from this morning, relaxed, happy, completely transformed. "Marcus," David said, crossing the room with his hand extended. "Thank you so much for coming." "This is my daughter Emma," Marcus said, feeling Emma hide slightly behind his legs. Victoria looked up with a smile that made her whole face glow. "Emma, I'm so happy to meet you. Your daddy is a hero." "I know," Emma said solemnly, stepping forward. "He used to help sick people before I was born, but then he learned how to build things instead so he could always come home to me on time." David and Victoria exchanged a look that Marcus couldn't quite interpret. "Would you like to meet the baby?" Victoria asked Emma. Emma nodded eagerly, and Victoria carefully turned the bundle so they could see the tiny face. Baby was awake, staring around with the unfocused gaze of the very new, her little fist curled against her cheek. "She's so small," Emma whispered. "What's her name?" "Grace," Victoria said softly. "Grace Thompson Chen." Marcus felt like the floor had shifted under his feet.
"Thompson? We wanted to honor the man who brought her safely into the world," David explained. "If that's okay with you."
Marcus looked from David to Victoria to the tiny baby who now carried his name and felt something break open in his chest.
That's incredibly generous. But you don't need to thank me like that. It's not just thanks, Victoria said. When I was lying on that subway platform, terrified that something would go wrong, you made me feel safe. You made me believe that everything would be okay. That's not something you forget. Emma had moved closer to the bed, fascinated by baby Grace. Can I touch her hand? Very gently, Victoria said, guiding Emma's finger to the baby's tiny fist. Grace's fingers immediately curled around Emma's finger with that instinctive newborn grip. She likes me, Emma breathed, her face lighting up with wonder. She has excellent taste, David said, making Emma giggle. They visited for almost an hour. David and Victoria asked about Emma's school, about Marcus's work, about their life in general. Emma told them about her friend Sophia's upcoming birthday party and her plans to become a veterinarian who also helps people, which she'd apparently decided during dinner. When it was time to leave, Victoria caught Marcus's hand. David mentioned that you used to be a paramedic. A long time ago. Why did you stop? Marcus glanced at Emma, who was saying goodbye to baby Grace. Single-parent life required different priorities. But you loved it, Victoria said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Marcus admitted. I did. David has something he wants to discuss with you, Victoria said. About work, about possibilities. David stepped forward, looking slightly nervous. Davidson Holdings has been looking for someone to head up our workplace safety program. Someone with medical training who understands construction sites. The job would involve traveling to our various projects, training workers in emergency response, making sure our safety protocols are actually practical. He paused. The hours would be regular, the pay would be better than construction work, and you'd be helping people again. Marcus stared at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity. If you're interested, we can discuss details. But Marcus, what you did today, the way you handled an emergency situation with skill and compassion, that's exactly what we need. Daddy, Emma whispered, tugging on his sleeve. This is like when the fairy godmother gives Cinderella the dress for the ball. Life isn't a fairy tale, sweetheart, Marcus said automatically. But sometimes good things happen to good people, Victoria said gently. Sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be. As they rode the elevator down to the lobby, Emma chatted excitedly about baby Grace and the fancy hospital room, and how Victoria's hair was so shiny it looked like a princess. Marcus listened with half his attention while the other half tried to process what had just happened. A job offer, a real job offer, in a field that would use his medical training and still allow him to maintain normal hours for Emma. It seemed too good to be true, which usually meant it was. But as they walked through the hospital lobby, past the emergency department where he'd spent so many shifts years ago, Marcus felt something stirring that he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Daddy, Emma said as they waited for their train home, are you going to take the job with baby Grace's daddy? I don't know yet, Em. It's a big decision. But you liked helping that lady today, right? And you miss helping sick people? Yeah, I do miss it. Emma nodded wisely. Then you should probably take the job. Plus, then we could visit baby Grace sometimes and watch her grow up. On the train home, Marcus pulled out David Chen's business card and really looked at it for the first time. Davidson Holdings had built half the skyscrapers in Chicago's skyline. They were known for treating their workers well, for innovative safety programs, for being the kind of company that people wanted to work for, rather than just the company that paid the bills. This morning he'd been Marcus Thompson, single dad and construction worker, focused on getting through each day and making sure Emma had everything she needed. Tonight he was Marcus Thompson, the man who delivered a baby on a subway platform and somehow earned the attention of one of Chicago's most successful businessmen. He thought about what Victoria had said about the universe putting people where they needed to be. Marcus had never been big on fate or destiny. Life had taught him that good and bad things happened randomly without cosmic purpose. But something about today felt different. Something about the way all the pieces had fallen into place. The delayed train, his forgotten medical training, David Chen's gratitude, made him wonder if maybe sometimes the universe did have a plan. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Victoria. David wanted me to send you this information about the position we discussed. No pressure, but we hope you'll consider it. And thank you again for everything today. Grace and I are both doing perfectly, thanks to you. The text included a link to a job posting that made Marcus's eyes widen. The salary was nearly double what he made in construction. The benefits included health insurance, dental, and a college fund contribution program for employees' children. The job description talked about traveling to work sites, implementing safety training programs, and serving as an on-site medical resource for construction crews. It was everything he'd never dared to hope for. "What's that?" Emma asked, noticing his expression. "Information about that job. The good kind of information or the bad kind?" Marcus looked at his daughter, at her trusting face and her belief that good things could happen to good people, and felt the last of his resistance crumble. "The very good kind," he said. That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat at their small kitchen table with his laptop open, reading through the job posting for the third time. He'd also Googled Davidson Holdings and spent an hour reading about their company culture, their safety record, their reputation in the industry. Everything he found reinforced his initial impression. This was a company that would be a privilege to work for. But accepting the job would mean leaving behind the security of his current position, stepping back into a world he'd left behind 3 years ago. It would mean trusting that David Chen's gratitude was genuine, that this wasn't just an impulsive gesture that would disappear once the emotions of the day faded. Marcus thought about the moment on the subway platform when baby Grace had first cried, announcing her arrival to the world. In that instant, everything else had fallen away. His worries about money, his exhaustion from manual labor, his fears about whether he was doing right by Emma. For those few minutes, he'd been exactly who he was meant to be. Maybe it was time to trust that feeling. He opened his email and began typing a response to David Chen. Marcus stared at the blank email for 20 minutes before he started typing. Delete, restart, delete again. How do you accept a job offer that feels too good to be true without sounding desperate or ungrateful for your current situation? Finally, he kept it simple. Mr. Chen, thank you for the generous offer. I'd like to learn more about the position and discuss how we could make this work. I'm available to meet at your convenience. Marcus Thompson. He hit send before he could second-guess himself again, then immediately wondered if he should have been more formal, more enthusiastic, more something. But the email was gone, and there was no taking it back now. His phone rang less than 5 minutes later. Marcus? David Chen. I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all. Marcus glanced at the clock. 9:30 p.m. How are Victoria and Grace doing? They're perfect. Grace just finished eating and is sleeping like an angel. Victoria is already planning to go back to work next week, even though I keep telling her she should take more time. David's voice was warm with affection. She says Grace is clearly going to be an overachiever just like her parents. Marcus smiled. She seemed like a determined little person, even a few hours old. About the job, David continued. I know this is sudden, and I want you to feel completely comfortable with your decision. Would you be available to come to our offices tomorrow? I'd like you to meet some of our team, see our current safety protocols, get a real sense of what the position would involve. I work until 5, but I could come after I pick up my daughter from school. Around 6? Perfect. And please bring Emma. I know Victoria would love to see her again. And honestly, understanding how this job would work for your family is part of the conversation we need to have. After they hung up, Marcus sat in his quiet kitchen and tried to imagine what his life would look like in 6 months if he took this job. Better apartment? Maybe in a neighborhood with good schools and a yard where Emma could play. Financial security instead of the constant stress of living paycheck to paycheck. Work that felt meaningful instead of just necessary. It seemed impossible, but then again, this morning delivering a baby on a subway platform had seemed impossible too. The next day dragged by slower than any workday Marcus could remember. Every time he tried to focus on his tasks, his mind wandered to the meeting ahead. Jim noticed his distraction by lunchtime. You're jumpier than a cat in a thunderstorm today. What's going on? Marcus had been debating whether to tell Jim about the job offer. They'd worked together for 3 years, and Jim had been nothing but supportive and understanding. He deserved honesty. Remember that lady I helped yesterday? Her husband offered me a job. Jim's eyebrows shot up. What kind of job? Safety coordinator for Davidson Holdings. Medical training, site inspections, emergency response protocols. Davidson Holdings? Jim let out a low whistle. Holy shit, Marcus. That's like going from the minor leagues to the World Series. I haven't taken it yet. I'm just going to learn more about it tonight. But you're thinking about it. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Jim was quiet for a moment, staring out at the construction site where they'd worked side by side for years. You know, I always wondered why someone with your medical background was swinging a hammer for a living. I figured you had your reasons, and it wasn't my business to ask. Single-parent life. I needed predictable hours and steady pay. And now? Now Emma's older, more independent. And this job would be both predictable and better pay. Jim nodded slowly. You'd be crazy not to explore it, and honestly, you'd be wasted staying here. You're a good worker, Marcus, but you're capable of way more than this. That afternoon, Marcus picked Emma up from school and explained where they were going. She was even more excited than he'd expected.
We get to see where baby Grace's daddy works? Is it a fancy office with elevators and everything?
I think so, yes.
And we
Might get to see Victoria again?
Maybe.
She might still be in the hospital. I hope she is. I want to see if baby Grace got bigger overnight. Davidson Holdings occupied the top 15 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise. The lobby was all marble and glass, with a directory that listed dozens of companies Marcus had heard of but never imagined he'd be visiting. The elevator to the 32nd floor was faster and smoother than any he'd ever ridden. Emma pressed her face to the glass as they rose above the city, watching the buildings shrink below them.
Daddy, look how tiny all the cars are.
We're so high up. The Davidson Holdings reception area was intimidating in its understated elegance. Modern furniture, original artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows with views that stretched to the lake. Emma gripped Marcus's hand tighter as they approached the reception desk. We're here to see David Chen, Marcus told the receptionist. Of course, Mr. Thompson. He's waiting for you in the conference room. Margaret will take you up. Margaret turned out to be the same efficient voice from yesterday morning, now attached to a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a warm smile. It's so nice to meet you in person, she said, shaking Marcus's hand. And you must be Emma. I hear you're going to be a veterinarian who also helps people. Emma beamed at being remembered. I decided last night that I might also want to deliver babies like Daddy did. That way I can help animals and people and babies. That sounds like an excellent plan, Margaret said seriously. The world can always use more helpers. The conference room was on the 35th floor, with windows on two sides and a view that made Emma gasp out loud. David Chen was already there, along with two other people, a woman in her 40s wearing scrubs under a blazer, and a man about Marcus's age in work clothes that looked expensive but practical. Marcus, Emma, thank you for coming, David said, standing to greet them. I want you to meet Sarah Martinez, our current head of worker health services, and Tom Bradley, our construction site supervisor. They'll be working closely with whoever takes this position. Sarah stepped forward first. Marcus, David told me about what you did yesterday. I've been a trauma nurse for 15 years, and I know how hard it is to deliver a baby under normal circumstances, let alone on a subway platform. It was just training and instinct, Marcus said. Anyone with medical background would have done the same thing. No, Tom interjected. They wouldn't have. I've been on construction sites where guys have had heart attacks, broken bones, serious injuries, and most people just freeze up. Having someone who can actually think clearly and act quickly in an emergency, that's rare. Emma had gravitated toward the windows, staring out at the city spread below them. David noticed and walked over to her. Pretty impressive view, isn't it? I can see my school from here, Emma said, pointing toward the distance. And there's the lake! Daddy, did you know the lake was so big? I did, sweetheart. What do you think of this place? Emma considered the question seriously. It's really fancy, but the people seem nice. And baby Grace's daddy has a kind voice, just like you do when you're helping me with something hard. David smiled at that assessment. Thank you, Emma. That might be the nicest compliment I've ever received. For the next hour, Sarah and Tom walked Marcus through what the safety coordinator position would actually involve. Site visits to construction projects throughout the region, developing training protocols for different types of emergency situations, maintaining first aid stations and emergency equipment, conducting safety drills, and serving as the medical response person for any incidents that occurred on Davidson Holdings projects. Our workers currently get basic first aid training, Tom explained, but having someone with real paramedic experience on call would change everything. Response times, quality of care, worker confidence. Some of these guys are working 40 stories up. Knowing there's someone nearby who can handle a real emergency makes a huge difference. What's the travel schedule like? Marcus asked, thinking about Emma's school and after-school care. Most sites are within driving distance, Sarah said. Occasional overnight trips, but we'd work around your daughter's schedule. David was very clear that this position needed to work for your family, not against it. Speaking of which, David said, we've arranged for Emma to visit with Victoria and Grace while we talk specifics, if that's okay with both of you. Emma's face lit up.
They're here?
Victoria insisted on coming in today, even though I told her she should rest.
Grace is sleeping in my office.
And Victoria is determined to get caught up on emails she missed yesterday.
David shook his head with fond exasperation. I married an unstoppable force. Margaret appeared to escort Emma to David's office, leaving Marcus alone with the three people who would become his closest colleagues if he took this job. The conversation that followed was unlike any job interview he'd ever experienced. They talked about his paramedic training, his years of experience, but also about his philosophy of helping people, his approach to staying calm under pressure, his thoughts on workplace safety culture. Tom shared stories about close calls on construction sites, near misses that could have been tragedies if not for quick thinking and good protocols. Sarah talked about the challenge of providing medical care in industrial environments where traditional emergency response wasn't always practical. The thing is, David said, we can teach safety protocols and emergency procedures to anyone. What we can't teach is the instinct to help, the ability to stay calm when everything is chaos, the judgment to know when to act and when to wait for backup. You proved yesterday that you have all of those qualities. I also proved that my medical skills are 3 years rusty, Marcus pointed out. Skills can be refreshed, Sarah said. We'd send you for updated training, recertification, whatever you need. The important foundation is already there. They discussed salary, benefits, vacation time, professional development opportunities. The numbers were even better than what Marcus had seen in the initial job posting. Health insurance that would cover both him and Emma completely. A college fund contribution that would actually make Emma's future education affordable. Salary that would let them move to a neighborhood with good schools and safe playgrounds. I need to ask, Marcus said finally, is this offer legitimate or is it gratitude for what happened yesterday? Because if it's gratitude, I appreciate it, but I can't accept a job that's really charity. David leaned back in his chair, considering the question. That's fair to ask. The truth is, we've been trying to fill this position for 8 months. We've interviewed dozens of candidates. EMTs, nurses, safety inspectors, former military medics, all qualified on paper, but none of them felt right for what we need. What do you need? Marcus asked. Someone who sees helping people as a calling, not just a job, Tom said. Someone who stays calm under pressure but also knows when to take charge. Someone who can work with construction crews without talking down to them or acting like they're better than manual labor. You delivered a baby on a subway platform, Sarah added. Then went to work your regular construction shift like it was no big deal. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your priorities. Plus, David said with a smile, Victoria threatened to make my life very difficult if I didn't at least try to hire you. She said anyone who could make her feel safe during the scariest moment of her life was someone she wanted in our company family. When Emma returned from visiting Victoria and Grace, she was practically bouncing with excitement. Daddy, baby Grace smiled at me. Victoria said babies don't really smile that young, but Grace definitely smiled right at me. And Victoria showed me pictures of the hospital room where Grace would have been born if she hadn't decided to be born on the subway instead. What did you think of that? Marcus asked. I think Grace is super smart. The hospital room was boring, but the subway platform sounds way more interesting. Plus, if she hadn't been born there, you wouldn't have met her daddy. And he wouldn't have offered you the job that makes you smile like you used to smile when you told stories about helping sick people.
Out of the mouths of babes.
The drive home was quiet, both Marcus and Emma lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Emma spoke up. Are you going to take the job, Daddy? What do you think I should do? I think you should do what makes you happy. You've been taking care of me for my whole life, making sure I have everything I need. But maybe it's time for you to have something you need too. What do you mean? You need to help people. It makes your eyes light up the same way mine do when I'm drawing or playing with animals. You should do the thing that makes your eyes light up. That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus called his sister Jenny in Seattle. She was the only family he had left, and while they didn't talk often, she knew him better than anyone. A job offer? Jenny said after he'd explained the whole story. Marcus, that's amazing. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It seems too good to be true. Or maybe it's just good. Maybe after everything you've been through, you deserve something good. What if I screw it up? What if I can't handle the responsibility? It's been 3 years since I worked emergency medicine. What if you don't screw it up? What if you're exactly as good at this as you used to be? What if this is the universe giving you a second chance at the career you loved? Since when do you believe in the universe giving people things? Jenny laughed. Since my big brother delivered a baby on a subway platform and got offered his dream job in the same day. That's not coincidence, Marcus. That's destiny knocking on your door. After they hung up, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad making lists. Pros and cons, risks and benefits, all the practical considerations of changing his entire life. But every time he tried to focus on the logical aspects of the decision, his mind kept returning to that moment yesterday when he'd caught baby Grace in his hands, and felt, for the first time in 3 years, like he was exactly where he belonged. He picked up his phone and scrolled to David Chen's number. "Marcus?" David answered on the second ring despite the late hour. "How are you feeling about everything?" "Nervous," Marcus admitted. "Excited, grateful, terrified." "That sounds about right for any major life change. What can I do to help you feel more confident about the decision?" "Nothing. I think I just need to trust that everything happens for a reason, and yesterday happened so I could meet you and your family." "Does that mean yes?" Marcus said, surprising himself with how certain he sounded. "I'd like to accept the position." "Really? That's fantastic." Victoria's going to be thrilled. Grace too, though she'll probably express her enthusiasm by sleeping through the celebration. They talked logistics, start date, training schedule, transition from his current job. David was understanding about giving proper notice to Jim, arranging for updated medical certifications, taking time to find a better apartment for him and Emma. "One more thing," David said before they hung up. "Victoria wanted me to ask if you'd consider being Grace's honorary uncle. She said Grace should grow up knowing the man who brought her safely into the world." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I'd be honored." After hanging up, Marcus walked into the bedroom where Emma was sleeping and watched her peaceful face in the dim light from the hallway. Tomorrow, he'd tell her that they were going to start a new chapter of their lives. Better apartment, better neighborhood, better opportunities for both of them. But more than that, he was going to go back to being the person he'd trained to be, the person he'd been before loss and fear had convinced him to settle for less than he was capable of. He thought about Sarah and how proud she would have been to see him taking this chance. She'd always believed he was meant to help people, that his medical training was a gift he was supposed to share with the world. Maybe it had just taken a premature baby and a stranger's gratitude to remind him that some gifts are too important to keep hidden. Marcus pulled out his phone one more time and sent a text to David. "Thank you for believing in me. I won't let you down." The response came back almost immediately. "You already proved who you are. Now you just get to do it every day." For the first time in 3 years, Marcus fell asleep excited about tomorrow. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood in the doorway of his new office at Davidson Holdings, still not quite believing it was real. The nameplate on the door read Marcus Thompson, Director of Emergency Medical Services and Site Safety. The title felt both foreign and perfectly right at the same time. The office was modest but professional, with a window overlooking the city and enough space for the medical equipment and training materials he'd need. Sarah Martinez had worked with him to design the layout, making sure everything was functional for both administrative work and hands-on training sessions. "Still feels surreal?" David asked, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. "Completely. Yesterday I was mixing concrete and now I have an office with my name on the door. How's Emma adjusting to everything?" Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. "She loves the new apartment. Having her own room for the first time has been life-changing. And the school district is incredible. Her teacher said she's already ahead of where she was at Lincoln Elementary." The new apartment was in Lincoln Park, just 15 minutes from Davidson Holdings headquarters. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a living room with space for Emma to spread out her art supplies, and best of all, a small balcony where she could grow the herbs she'd decided she wanted to cultivate. The rent was higher than their old place, but Marcus's new salary made it easily affordable. "Victoria wanted me to invite you and Emma for dinner this weekend," David said. "She's dying to show off how much Grace has grown, and honestly, she could use some adult conversation. Maternity leave is making her restless. We'd love that." Emma asks about Grace every day. Marcus's first 2 weeks at Davidson Holdings had been a whirlwind of training updates, site visits, and protocol development. His medical certifications had been quickly renewed, and he'd spent several days shadowing Sarah at different construction sites to understand the unique challenges of providing emergency medical care in industrial environments. The work was everything he'd hoped for, and more. Each construction site presented different risks and required customized safety protocols. High-rise projects needed plans for medical evacuation from extreme heights. Underground projects required specialized equipment for confined space emergencies. Bridge and tunnel work demanded understanding of both traffic management and water rescue procedures. "Thompson!" Tom Bradley's voice called from down the hallway. "You ready for the Millennium Tower site visit?" Millennium Tower was Davidson Holdings' most ambitious current project, a 60-story mixed-use building that would be the tallest residential tower in Chicago when completed. Marcus had been looking forward to this site visit since he'd started the job. The construction site was controlled chaos, exactly the way Marcus remembered from his years in manual labor, but now he was seeing it through different eyes. Instead of focusing on his individual tasks, he was assessing the medical risks, thinking about emergency response times, evaluating the placement of first aid stations and emergency equipment.
This is our biggest challenge, Tom explained, as they rode the construction elevator to the 40th floor.
At this height, normal emergency response protocols don't work. If someone has a heart attack or serious injury up here, we can't wait for city paramedics to figure out how to reach us. Marcus stepped out onto the open construction platform and immediately felt the wind whip around him. The view was breathtaking. The entire city spread out below, Lake Michigan stretching to the horizon, but he forced himself to focus on the safety implications. "What's the current protocol for medical emergencies?" he asked. "We stabilize the patient as best we can, then get them down via construction elevator to the street level where an ambulance can take over. But that's a minimum 10-minute delay, and with some conditions, 10 minutes can be the difference between life and death." Marcus walked around the platform, noting the placement of safety equipment, the layout of work areas, the potential hazards unique to this elevation. His mind was already working through solutions, drawing on his paramedic experience and his new understanding of construction site logistics. "What if we establish a medical staging area on the 20th floor, he suggested. "High enough to avoid street-level response delays, but low enough that we can get critical patients down quickly. We could stock it with advanced life support equipment. Maybe even arrange for helicopter medical evacuation in extreme cases." Tom's eyes lit up. "That could work. The 20th floor is mostly finished, so we could set up a proper medical bay without interfering with ongoing construction." They spent the rest of the morning walking through the proposal, identifying the equipment they'd need, the training protocols for different types of emergencies, the communication systems that would allow workers on higher floors to quickly alert medical response teams below. "This is exactly why David wanted you for this job," Tom said as they prepared to head back down. "I've been working construction for 15 years, and I never would have thought of a solution like this. You see the whole picture. Medical needs, construction realities, worker safety, and you can make it all work together." That afternoon, Marcus spent several hours in his office developing the Millennium Tower medical response protocol. It felt incredible to be using his brain in this way again, solving complex problems that would directly impact people's safety and well-being. Around 4 o'clock, his desk phone rang. "Marcus, this is reception. There's a woman here to see you, Victoria Chen. She says it's urgent." Marcus's heart immediately jumped to worst-case scenarios. Had something happened to Grace? Was Victoria having postpartum complications? He hurried to the lobby and found Victoria pacing near the elevators, holding Grace's carrier and looking upset. "Victoria, what's wrong? Is Grace okay?" "Grace is fine," Victoria said quickly. Then her composed exterior cracked. "I'm not fine. I think I'm losing my mind." Marcus guided her to a quiet seating area in the lobby. "What happened?" "I was driving to my doctor's appointment, and I started having chest pains. Racing heart, trouble breathing, feeling dizzy. I was sure I was having a heart attack, so I pulled over and called 911. "Are you hurt? Did you go to the hospital?" "The paramedics said it was probably a panic attack. They wanted to take me to the ER for observation, but I refused because Grace was with me and I didn't want her in a hospital environment unnecessarily." Victoria sat down heavily, looking exhausted. "I've never had a panic attack in my life, Marcus. I don't understand what's happening to me." Marcus sat down across from her, automatically shifting into the calm, reassuring demeanor he'd perfected during his paramedic years. "First, let me look at Grace to make sure she's okay, then we'll figure out what's going on with you." Grace was sleeping peacefully in her carrier, completely unaware of her mother's distress. Marcus checked her breathing, her color, her general responsiveness, all normal for a 2-week-old baby. "She's perfect," he told Victoria. "Now, tell me about these chest pains." "When did they start?" "This morning, but I've been feeling anxious for days. David thinks I should call my doctor, but I don't want to seem like I'm overreacting. Everyone says the first few weeks with a baby are overwhelming, and maybe I'm just not handling it as well as I thought I would." Marcus studied Victoria's face, pale, tired, with the slightly unfocused look of someone who hadn't been sleeping well. "Victoria, when was the last time you had a full night's sleep?" "I don't remember. Grace is still eating every 2 hours, and even when she's sleeping, I keep waking up to check on her. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't been on that subway platform, if something had gone wrong during the delivery, if I'm not taking good enough care of her now." That's not unusual, Marcus said gently. New mother anxiety is incredibly common, especially after a traumatic birth experience. And giving birth on a subway platform, no matter how well it went, definitely qualifies as traumatic. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. But I should be grateful, not anxious. Everything turned out perfectly. Grace is healthy. The delivery was successful. David has been amazing. I have everything I wanted, so why do I feel like I'm falling apart? Because trauma doesn't care about good outcomes, Marcus explained. Your body and mind went through an incredibly stressful experience. The fact that it ended well doesn't erase the fear and helplessness you felt during those moments on the subway platform. Is that why I keep having nightmares about something happening to Grace? Why? I can't stop checking on her every few minutes to make sure she's still breathing. Very likely. You've experienced what it's like for things to go completely off plan, and now your brain is trying to protect you by staying hypervigilant about potential dangers. Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I didn't know who else to talk to about this. David is wonderful, but he doesn't understand what it was like to be lying on that platform, thinking I might lose the baby, thinking I might die, and he'd never even get to meet her. You were there. You saw how scared I was. Marcus felt a deep ache of empathy. He remembered this feeling from after Sarah's accident, the way trauma could make you question everything, make you afraid of possibilities you'd never considered before. Victoria, what you're experiencing is normal, but it's also treatable. There are therapists who specialize in postpartum anxiety and birth trauma, medication options if you need them, support groups with other women who've been through similar experiences. But I don't want to be the kind of mother who needs therapy to handle having a baby. You want to be the kind of mother who takes care of herself so she can take care of Grace, Marcus corrected. Getting help when you need it isn't weakness, it's wisdom. They talked for another 20 minutes, with Marcus sharing what he'd learnt about trauma and recovery during his paramedic training, and Victoria gradually seeming less panicked and more hopeful. When David arrived, Victoria had texted him about the incident. He was full of concern and gratitude. Thank you for being here, he told Marcus quietly, while Victoria was gathering Grace's things. I've been worried about her, but I didn't know how to help. She needs professional support, Marcus said. This isn't something you can fix with love and good intentions, though those definitely help. But there are people trained specifically for this kind of situation. Will you help us find the right person? Victoria trusts you in a way she doesn't trust most people. Of course. As Victoria and David left with plans for Marcus to research therapists who specialized in birth trauma and postpartum anxiety, Marcus reflected on how strange life could be. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a construction worker focused on his own small world. Now he was not only pursuing his professional calling again, but he'd somehow become part of this family support system in a way that felt both unexpected and absolutely right. That evening, Marcus picked Emma up from her new school and listened to her excited chatter about her day. Her teacher had praised her math skills, she'd made friends with a girl named Sophie who also loved art, and the school library was apparently way bigger than our old one with books about everything. How was your day, Daddy? Emma asked as they walked toward their new apartment. Complicated, but good. I helped design safety protocols for a 60-story building, and I also helped Victoria when she was feeling scared about being a new mom.
Is baby Grace okay? Grace is perfect.
Victoria just needed someone to talk to about how overwhelming it can be to take care of a baby. Emma nodded seriously. Like how you needed to talk to Aunt Jenny after Mummy died, because even though you knew how to take care of me, it was still scary to do it all by yourself. Marcus stopped walking, struck by his daughter's insight. Exactly like that. I'm glad Victoria has us to help her. Everyone needs people who understand when things are hard. That weekend, they had dinner at David and Victoria's house, a beautiful brownstone in Lincoln Park that was somehow both elegant and comfortable. Victoria seemed much more relaxed after starting therapy sessions with a counselor who specialized in postpartum issues, and Grace had indeed grown noticeably in the 2 weeks since Marcus had first met her. Emma was fascinated by how tiny Grace still was, asking endless questions about baby development and declaring that she definitely wanted to be a baby doctor when she grew up, but only for the happy births, not the scary ones.
All births are a little scary, Victoria told her.
But having good people to help makes all the difference. After dinner, while Emma was carefully holding Grace under Victoria's supervision, David pulled Marcus aside. I wanted you to know that the Millennium Tower medical protocol you developed has already been approved by the safety board. We're implementing it next week. That fast? When you present a solution that could save lives, we don't mess around with bureaucracy. Tom says the workers are already talking about how much safer they feel knowing there's a real medical response plan. Marcus watched Emma gently stroking Grace's tiny hand, whispering to her about all the things they'd do together when Grace was older. I never imagined my life could change this much this quickly. Change can be scary, David said, but it can also be the best thing that ever happens to you. As they prepared to leave, Victoria handed Marcus a wrapped package, just a little thank you gift. Inside was a framed photo from Grace's birthday, not of the dramatic moment on the subway platform, but of later that evening at the hospital, when Marcus and Emma had visited. In the picture, Grace was sleeping in Victoria's arms, while Emma stood beside the hospital bed, her small hand resting protectively on the baby's blanket. Marcus was in the background, smiling with an expression of pure contentment. I wanted you to have this, Victoria said, because this was the moment I knew that Grace would grow up with the best.